Hello, everyone. Welcome to My Spiritual Money RX. And you probably see that I'm in a different room, different background, but this is all good. We're here for you to answer some of your questions, perhaps on your own money story and perhaps how to overcome that. So we're actually coming in with majority of my TWI team today, and we will be answering any of your finance question, perhaps something to do with your energy, why your business is not moving where you want it to be. Perhaps it is some emotion that's like stuck and you don't know where to go. And maybe it's a business coaching question and you just don't know what to do with it, right? Like you don't know how to move from point A to point B. So we know that money stories can come from a variety of reasons. It could be physical, it could be emotional, like the feelings we have about it. It could be a mindset issue, or maybe it's a psychic spiritual issue. So I'm bringing up my team here today. I have Dave Baldwin. Welcome. He is our finance expert, and he answers a lot of your questions regarding money, setting things up, perhaps the spending plan or the budget, or perhaps just a whole overarching view of what is it that you need to do to help you really establish a solid foundation in your business and really improve your cash flow, right? Because that's what we're all looking for. And then Vienna is our emotion code practitioner. And of course, she has helped a lot of people release those triggers and those whatever negative energies related to those emotions that's stopping you from really building a successful business. And we also have Jade Stone from Florida, and she happens to have no visual today, but that's okay, a little bit unstable there in Florida. But we are here to answer any of those questions that you may have so that you can be clear on how you can up-level your life, right? It could be you're transitioning from employee to entrepreneur, or perhaps you've been in entrepreneur world, but you still don't know what to do with your packages. So we're here for you to answer those questions. All right, so Dave, go ahead and share a little bit of, I guess, a little overview of what just happened in our most recent up level, like outlines or points like that that you can share with the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, a couple of the big takeaways were just looking at, my piece was the financial habits that you have to put in place if you want to make the transition between an employee working in a structured job versus becoming self-employed, where you're making the transition from working for somebody to working with clients. Very different type of relationship, and it's a different way of managing money. And in relation to the idea of a money story, I guess the way I think of it is your financial psychology. There's a shift in psychology that has to be made. And it's not necessarily just thinking. There's also thinking, there's habits, and then there's conscious thinking, there's unconscious thinking. But the way that you manage your money, I know, at least in my experience, has been an ongoing process of improvement. And so that was a couple. There was a lot that came up at this last weekend's event around what does that look like to navigate that transition from a marketing standpoint, from a language standpoint, all those different components.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. And I know a lot of people are sometimes afraid of that word money, right? As we know, for them, it's like a big word. It's like a dinosaur in the closet and they don't want to bring it out. But what is the importance of having that certainty that you're never going to run out of cash when you actually open your own business?
Well, the real key is that if you're on unsteady ground and you're not sure if you're going to survive the next 2 or 3 months, you're going to be operating from fear. And as anybody who's been in any kind of business for any length of time knows, on a practical level, fear is a client repellent, because you're going to be essentially showing up, kind of looking like you're desperate to make the sale. And that's just, I mean, people are just repulsed by that. That's where, so I think really for me, that's the big takeaway, is that if you have to create that stability, otherwise you create this downward spiral of you project desperation, your income drops, you become more desperate. And, but thankfully there's a way to interrupt that. And it begins with that stability.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to take forever, especially if someone holds your hand who knows what they're doing, and you just get out of corporate, right? So you know exactly, because in the past, you were also in the same boat that you would, you had a job, but then you were trying to work a business.
Yes.
What's the difference between you exiting your job before versus now?
Well, I mean, it's been a gradual process. I mean, it's always been, there's always something I have to work on. I mean, the first time I ever left a job and started my own business, that was 2007. And I did everything wrong pretty much that first year. And, I've since then had numerous different jobs. I have a combination of self-employed and traditional types of income. And it's been a gradual process of just having to learn how to manage financially with the psychology of a self-employed entrepreneur, which essentially it requires a lot more of creating your own structure. Whereas if you're an employee, that structure is created for you. You're told when to report to work, what to do. And from an income standpoint, you're provided with a salary or a wage, but it's generally fixed or fixed to a great degree. Right. And you don't really have to, you're mainly just thinking about how do I make sure I don't spend too much. But your income, you don't really have that much control over. So then when you're an entrepreneur, on the positive side, you have the ability to make a lot more. But if you're not working, nobody's going to come knock on your door like a boss would in a job, but your income is going to drop off. And so people a lot of times think that it takes more discipline, but I don't really think that's necessarily the case. I think it's more of, it requires a different set of habits that's unfamiliar for somebody who's only ever worked in a traditional job.
Yes, definitely. So Jade, would you like to chime in? So Jade is our business coach and business manager in our TWI team. And Jade, would you like to add on to what Dave was just mentioning? What do you see people that are transitioning from employee to entrepreneurship? Like, how can we really help them, even, us as a team all together? So I'm going to mute. Unmute.
So I think, okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. So one thing that I would say to anyone who is considering making this transition or has already decided to make this transition, the first thing that I always tell people is to get very, very clear on what your why is. What is the reason that you are doing this? And what I would say is go a couple levels deep, right? So if your immediate response is, well, I'm just sick of my boss telling me what to do. I want to be my own boss. Great. What's below that, right? Freedom, it sounds like, right? Maybe what's below that. Okay, what are they telling you to do that you don't like? Well, I don't like that. This work, I don't see the point in this work, right? It's not purpose driven. Oh, okay. So then your why also has to do with the fact that you want to be doing something that lights you up every day, right? It might be the fact, I can never leave early to see my kid's soccer game, right? And I want to be able to do that. Oh, wonderful. So having a balance of work and life and being your own boss is important to you, right? So very quickly, right, we can say, well, I wait for money, right? Even under that. Okay, what's under that? What do you want to do with that money, right? And it seems like such a simple thing, but here's the thing. I always have people do this, write it, save it on their desktop, make copies of it, send it to me as I'm doing business coaching with them, because the amount of times that we go back to that why is more than you would even think, okay? Because when it gets hard, right? When there's struggle, when there's, should I even be doing this, Jade? Should I just go back and get, a job? This just doesn't seem to be working. The first thing that we do is go back to the why. Not, I know Dave won't like this, but how much money is in the bank account, right? Not how many clients we have. All that means is we just don't have the right structure yet. And making, fear-based decisions, right? How can we, right? The money is the money. He's right about that. It is what it is, right? But what can we do with what we have, right? Maybe we have to go a little bit smaller, right? We have to show up and not be as ready. Like there's certain things that we can do, right, with knowing that strategy. So that's always my first thing. And that is a simple, free thing. Anyone get a piece of notebook paper out right now and do, but ask yourself at least 5 times, but why, what's under that? But why, what's under that?
Yeah.
And then you'll have a very full, this is the reason I want to do this. And that can help you in times of struggle or hardship going through building a business.
In other words, like they have to be very convinced themselves that it is the reason why they're doing the business so that they don't have to keep on changing their mind.
Exactly, because look, you're right, some kind of freedom.
Yeah, some kind of freedom. Yeah. And it's interesting because people think of freedom as they don't have any boss, nobody's breathing down on their neck, nobody's telling them what to do. However, like Dave has pointed out, if there's no discipline, you didn't put a discipline in yourself, so to speak, you're just going to do whatever. So you go to the opposite side of, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but then you also don't have money flow coming in. It's still a balance act, right? Am I correct, Dave?
Yes, I would agree with that. And I should qualify, I generally agree with everything Jade said. I think it's a question of, if you don't have financial stability, how do you create it? And I do agree. I think you've got to start with your big why. And because if the only why you have is I need money, nobody cares. Guess what? We all need money. So what?
Yeah, or we all want more, right?
That's the exactly.
Thing. The more money gives us more freedom, gives us more choices, it gives us more options. Really, that's what it is, right? So money is a form of energy, and money, unfortunately, is in everything. Fortunately or unfortunately, right? Physically, if you have it, great. If you don't have it, usually there's an emotion associated with not having it. And we repel that, like, oh no, I'm not gonna have this, and that. Too many, like, I can't have this, and that. Like too many parameters. And then money's like, but I thought you wanted me. But then now you're giving me too many rules. Like, what are you doing to me, right? I mean, if we give a character to money. So that's where Vienna comes in, is she works on the emotions, the negative emotions. So Vienna, welcome to the show. And thank you for being here in My Spiritual Money RX. So what have you seen the number one block, like the stoppage? Like, there's so many emotions, obviously, right? You said how many in that chart?
60
emotions that could be trapped in our body, causing us to have an issue. So what are some of those negative emotions? Can you share what you found even in the last up level?
Yep, I'd say the very most common is shock.
Shock. Oh, they're shocked that they're an entrepreneur?
Throughout life. You know what? From the day people are born. Often birth is the first shock. It's like, whoa, where'd my cushion go? Where's my comfort zone?
Yep.
The first comfort zone loss.
Yes.
So that's a very important one to clear, because as you said, Vivian, you taught us in one of the recent classes, when shock happens to the body, whether it's emotional, physical, actual physical accident, our organs just
freeze. Yeah. That's what they do. Freeze.
Yeah. And then ease, grace, and flow is not the name of that game. It's froze, stuck, and and hardship. So that's a very important one to clear. And then I'd say another very common one is like hopelessness.
Oof.
And that's just a tough place, no matter how you slice it. Abandonment is a harsh one. Worthless, unworthy, those just show up again and again and again. So those are the kinds of things that we want to be sure to help people identify so they can clear, and then they can move forward. And for me, shock was a big one for me. And you have patiently helped me over the last 2 years. And I won't say I have no more money stories, but I'd say they're getting less every quarter, thankfully.
Good job.
Yay. So, glad to have that to offer people. And really, the more tools you can get into your own hands, because
Mhm.
who's going to be there for you at 2 a.m. but you, when
Exactly.
you're tossing and turning and thinking, oh dear, what do I do next? So that's one of the things that I love about your work, is that you teach people and give them tools in their own hands, so that
Yeah.
when those questions come, they have some defenses. So not only can they get their finances lined out, and they can get their plan lined out and their marketing lined out, but they can get their tools lined out so that they can be stable and they're not the one rocking their own boat.
Right. So I'm just going to share thank you, Vienna. Thank you for that. And so I'm just going to share how this whole team works, right? So they come in, we have events, and then I kind of literally jumpstart the system, right? So you see
Literally.
me as a #1 money magnet activator and human MRI. So I can see the medical side and then also the money stories that go with it. And the title of our show is How to Overcome Your Money Stories. And obviously we bring a lot of us, right? The team of experts. We have Jade Stone, who does the business, let's say business planning, and really asking your why. Like, why are you doing it? Because we noticed this a lot in previous programs we've had. When the person, and this is a good thing, right? When you've done it a few times, you're like, people really need something different. And they just don't need one, because you're just not a physical being, especially now when you're birthing a baby, which is your business. So Jade comes in and clarifies really their big why, this business intention, like why that's happening. And then Dave is our finance expert. So then you don't feel like, oh my God, I just removed all of my clothes that I had before because I'm an employee. I was an employee and now I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and that requires a different outfit. It has different requirements. And then Vienna takes care of all these emotional triggers. And then Amy Lancy, our copywriter, helps you bring together, okay, what is it? How am I going to show up in the market? What is this package that I'm going to bring to the table so that I can actually help my ideal clients? And then Andrea Kuchin is our accountability coach, holding your hand along the way. And you say, you said you were going to do something, but then we're not quite there yet. So let's put all these pieces together, because we understood as a team that we can't do it alone. Are we modeling it, people? So Jade, Dave, Vienna, go ahead. And so I think Jade's going to be checking out soon. So Jade, can you share what is the advantage? What are the advantages of having a team of experts in your corner when you actually decide, I'm going to run a business? We're going to unmute Jade. Jade, can you unmute? There you go. Yeah, we'll give you time to share with the audience, because I know you're going to leave soon. So Jade, go ahead and share. What is the advantage of having a team on your
Hello,
side?
can you hear me?
Yes, with the
There
different.
we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, technical difficulties today for sure. Okay, so I would say the biggest things to look at. Can you repeat the question, Vivian?
So because we are a team, you're in the business side, Dave has expertise in finance, Vienna is emotion, Amy is marketing, and Andrea is accountability. So what is the advantage of having all of the experts on your side when you actually decide you're going to run a business?
Yes, thank you. So the biggest thing that I think I've seen, I have a lot of business clients that I work with across the country. And one thing that's really special with Vivian's company is, from the beginning, she wanted to be a place for growth, money-wise and spiritual. And that you really can't find anywhere, right? It's really not found. You're either making money or you're doing spiritual. You're not doing both. So I would say one of the biggest differences is having all the experts that Vivian's put in place would cost you thousands on your payroll to have individually the type of access that you have in any of her programs throughout a 3-month or 6-month process. And that type of support, because Vivian says all the time, let's just do what we're good at, right? And so she has no problem, moving you over to any of those things. So I do have to go ahead and hop off, but thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jade. And if you have any specific questions for Jade, go ahead and put it on the chat, and we will definitely take a look at it in the next 1 to 2 days so we can schedule an appointment for any of these experts so that you can actually take a look at what is it that's missing in your life to really build a very successful business, right? So I think we just lost Vienna. So let me remove her first, and then Dave, what is the advantage? Because you just transitioned from employee to entrepreneurship. So what's the advantage of having multiple people on your side to really see the different angles that perhaps the one person or one coach can't see?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, it's a lot harder to stay encouraged when you're in isolation. I think when you're in your own head trying to figure everything out, that's just from an emotional standpoint, its motivation gets a lot harder versus when you have a team around you and you don't feel like you're doing it all by yourself and you don't feel like you have to figure it all out. But I think from a practical standpoint, to address what you'd said about the different perspectives, the popular quote comes to mind for me that you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that you use to create it. And, just in terms of learning how to retrain yourself and get into a new kind of thinking and unfamiliar ways of thinking, it requires different vantage points just to first of all, even realize what the questions are to ask. I mean, because sometimes if you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong answers, but a team can kind of really come out and say, okay, well, let's actually re-examine this from these different perspectives and actually invite you to consider there's even a different question to ask and just a different viewpoint to look at that you probably wouldn't have thought of. It's so yeah, I mean, a team really, for me, is just always about, my goal is always to be the dumbest person in the room. If I'm the smartest person in the room, then I'm in trouble because nobody else is going to come up with anything I can't come up with myself. So
yeah, true. Thank you for sharing that. And that carries a lot of humility, right? Because obviously, if you're entering, it's kind of like you're in elementary, maybe grade 4 or 5, and then suddenly you go, you know what? I'm going to go to college right now and skip high school. I mean, that's kind of what you said. But then you skip and you go, what are they talking about? Because entrepreneurship has different kinds of languages, right? But you have the energetics of, yes, I want to jump like a quantum leap, but I need some help. Can somebody please hold my hands so that I can actually walk this successfully? And I know from a fact that if we don't hire mentors and specialists to walk with us, okay, it's good that if you walk your walk and talk your talk, obviously you're going to get there faster, right? The mentorship and the coaching actually collapses your time space reality to get there. Vienna, in this case, emotions that come up. Would you say that after you clear an emotion, it's done? Or is it, let's say you have a marketing issue now, or let's say you have a budgeting issue. Do those emotions come up anytime? Like, when does it come up? And when can we use that special help?
That is a fantastic question, Vivian. What the wonderful news is let's say I had a trapped emotion from grade school, some events there. And when that was cleared, and we clear it by going over the governing meridian, it's a very simple sweep. We bring something to the conscious mind, and then it's an easy clear with our magnetic fingertips. So, when that is dismissed, it's gone. It'd be like trying to you pop a balloon and then you're going to go try to pull all the air back together. No, it's just gone. It's energy. Now, there are layers, right? We may come to the outer layers first and then go deeper, 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 deeper. So there may be a familiar emotion. We may say, oh, I'm here again, but really we're not. We're on a spiral and we're going the right direction now. Sometimes life just gets so heavy and we're going down, 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 down. And we think, So the same thing that, the screwdriver this way puts the screw in, going the other way brings it back out. So that's what our team can do is reverse the rotation so that you're coming up and out.
Mm-hmm.
We may see a familiar emotion, but it's not at all on the same plane. And each time we're making progress. And then we respond completely differently. I've had
Yes.
circumstances come up and I know it looks just exactly the same on the outside, but I'm not triggered anymore.
Right.
I'm
That's
completely
important.
differently. Yeah.
Yes.
So I've loved that about the work that we can do together. And then when we get those new circumstances, that may trigger some different emotions that we hadn't come across yet. So it seems to come in waves, you know, where
Mhm.
I'll need it for a bit. But the thing that I encourage people to do is become a professional noticer of your own, of your own situation. I got that
Professional noticer.
that's not original, but I just love that concept because when I began to care enough about myself that I could notice when I was triggered, then I could do something about it. But when I didn't know and I thought this was just life as it had to be, I was stuck.
Mm.
I didn't even know to reach for a tool. I didn't even know it was broken.
Exactly.
You know, and duct tape's not the answer on this one.
Yes. Yes. And I believe there are a few questions. So is it okay that we bring this up now, right? So there's a question for Dave, our finance officer here. Dave, do you feel like a lot of business owners go into isolation, and how can you tell?
I think that everybody goes into isolation to some degree and for a lot of different reasons. But I think, I mean, it's an interesting question about how do you tell? I think usually it has to do with communication. I mean, I think a lot of times right, especially now with COVID and the world going virtual, when everything's happening over email. But I think for a small business owner, the tendency, some of the markers, as I would put it, that show up when somebody is isolated to an excessive degree might be a lack of responsiveness, because there's kind of a downward spiral that may set in, that when you become isolated, you actually isolate yourself further. So I think when somebody stops responding, or somebody just becomes elusive and responses in their communication, or a lot of times I think when I ask a question about a number and the answer I get is about a feeling, then that's actually another pattern that can show up when you're in isolation, is focusing exclusively on your feelings and emotions and not dealing with data. Versus, I think that's where, when you get in around a group of people and you're communicating, and what tends to happen is the data comes to the surface more readily, because that just is more likely to happen in a group than it is with one person alone. But that's there's plenty of other things we could go into about that, but that's kind of my off the cuff response.
Got it. And Vienna, do you mind answering that question as well? Because I know that, so you can see how Dave is more the objective, wearing the objective hat, and he can look at things more objectively, versus a woman. Usually we're very emotional. That's why we have an emotion code expert here. Because the emotion is like the water, right? Unfortunately, let's bring water and let's just spill it all over your business. You see how you're going, but wait a minute, I'm doing something, and then there's this water all over the place, and I'm supposed to be working on this, and now I have to clean up this water. That's the emotion, people. That's really, I mean, it's real. We can't ignore the fact that we feel, especially if we're a female. And so here comes another person who knows how to clear it very quickly. Actually, it doesn't take years to clear an emotion, right? Because it's a trigger. It just is a wave. So Vienna, how would you address that?
Well, the thing that I think is so helpful is, like, Dave's got the objective, and I get to deal more in the subjective. It's this teeter-totter. Yes. We want it to be balanced. We don't want everything to be sliding off the table. Either direction, just saying.
That's right. And here I am with the energetics, like scooping at the whole thing from above, and we're like, but wait a minute, your ancestors are causing you some triggers here, or it's a previous trauma that you may have had, or you just have a fear of the future because you're really afraid to be successful. So some of the money conversations are because of fear of the future, fear not of failure. Sometimes it's actually fear of success. Believe it or not, those two are opposing characteristics, right? Failure and success. So even for me, I remember it wasn't the failure that I was afraid of because it shows. I fall down, I get back up. I fall down, I get back up. How many times as a kid have we fallen? We just kind of cry. "Ah, it hurts. I scraped my knee." But you get up back up, right? It's not like you don't go outside and play again on the same cement where I hurt my knee. I do it again and again and again. So how come some people can get back up, almost like nothing happened, and some people it's stuck in their cells. It's like in their cellular memory that they got hurt and they don't want to get hurt ever again. You know what happens, by the way, in the emotions like that are trapped?
Yeah, I think a key word there is resilience. I've been doing some reading lately on that.
Resilience.
And I think especially when it comes to the kind of data that Dave's talking about, for me, it's I like I'm thinking out of sight, like I'm safe. I'm going to put my head in the sand here. And if I don't look at the numbers, they won't be able to bite me. Well, guess what? Whoa, they bite me.
Guess what?
My nose. That's all.
Oh my God.
So, but when someone's in that emergency state, fight or flight, then they need to be able to clear that current layer of trauma that they're operating out of, that's become their modus operandi. And then now they can afford to look around. Before, when you're in fight or flight, you're so focused. It's like, where's the tree I can climb? Where's my safe place? And you just end up running in circles, chasing your tail, But if you can get that emergency out of your field, then you can afford, it doesn't feel too costly to look around. You feel safe. Nothing's going to chase you and eat you while you're looking around at the numbers. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And Dave, would you say that numbers are one of the highest form of fear when it comes to people when running their business?
Well, I think it's really about the relationship you have to numbers. I mean, the numbers are what they are, but the question is, are you looking at them and kind of like what you said about money stories? I think a lot of what happens when people have an unhealthy relationship to numbers, I noticed that there's a language construct around it. There's people that use I am statements. There's the ego getting involved with it. So it's, I am a poor person. It's very different than saying I have 25 cents in my bank account. The second statement, there is factual, it's numbers driven, but there's no tie to your ego. It's just simply a description of a condition that has nothing to do with me. But if you say I am a poor person, that's now I'm making it about who I am, and it's permanent. Like it can never go away. And I think my personal flavor of that, I never really thought of myself as a poor person, but I know earlier on, I used to say, like the first time I ever took a sales job was 2002. And I used to say, I'm terrible at sales. And that was the statement. And so you imagine you talk like that and you associate that with your identity, you have no possibility of creating a healthy relationship with money or not. And anytime you look at the numbers, it's just going to be dreadful. It's just a constant reminder that reinforces, I told you I was terrible at sales. Look at these numbers. So.
OMG, oh my gosh. Yeah, we always prove ourselves right, unfortunately. So Dave just mentioned the word I am. So when you're better off putting a label on your head and saying I am poor or I am bad with money. Because if you put that, people are not even going to approach you. Unfortunately, if you have that in your thought, you can walk around kind of like just broadcasting that frequency to every single human. So here you are saying that you have something to offer, but then your forehead says, I am poor, or I'm terrible with money. Might as well just don't do the work, like don't put out whatever you're putting out because it won't work very well. And we've noticed this, right? One of our participants last Saturday, she did put out something on social media, but then she didn't put her picture. There's nothing there. So how are you going to be seen. So there's still an issue of not being seen or fear of being seen. And when you recognize, when that becomes conscious, and it was perfect that she brought it up because finally she can be seen. You see? It's almost like you're hiding, but you really want to be seen, but you didn't know that you're doing the hiding in some of the activities and actions that you've been doing with your business. So one way to overcome a money story could be, like you said, just write down all your thoughts on a piece of paper. Just look at it every day. Take a look and have an inventory of what you're claiming that you are, because then you can draw a line across that, right? And then write the opposite of that, of what perhaps what you want to be, what you want to become in the future, so then you can start living it now. So it doesn't have to wait 10 years, 3 weeks. It could be now if you wanted an immediate change of that perception. Because you may have to convince yourself that you are actually also a money magnet. You have to convince you, because when you're convinced, then other people are just drawn to you. That's the energy of that. That makes sense? Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
Okay. So let me see if there's any other questions. So are there any other questions from the audience? And if you're watching this as a replay later, if you'd like to post your questions on Facebook, or perhaps you watched us on YouTube, we're also on Roku and Amazon Fire Stick. You can definitely do that, and we will answer your questions in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll make sure that we have a team member. Usually it's Amy Lancy that actually calls you back, or you can schedule our free clarity call, and definitely we will get back with you. Was there anything that showed up for the two of you while we were at Up Level last Saturday? Anything that you noticed with, oh, wait a minute, there is a question. Thank you very much. Okay. How would Dave or others suggest changing their relationship with money? So let's start with Dave.
Well, I would say the first thing that I can recommend is start looking at the numbers more often, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you, or whether you like the numbers or not. I mean, maybe pay attention to whatever emotions they bring up, but just simply start looking at it, whether it's even as simple as log into your bank account once a day and look at what the balance is, and just get, and especially if you really don't like the feeling, to just, simply pay attention to what that brings up. I think that's probably the best place to start. And, from there, you can then take a look at, once you know what the numbers are, you then start getting more clear about the numbers. So if, let's say, for example, you've got money in your bank account, but you're not really sure how long it's going to last, then you can start looking at, okay, well, what are your monthly expenses? Based on that, how much are you expecting to make? And if you think about it, instead of trying to change numbers or change the relationship to the numbers, if you focus on getting clear what the numbers are, naturally over time, as you make that a habit, your relationship to the numbers will likely change. It has to.
Got it. And then I'm gonna also give you an overview. Let's say you have a goal for a year, right? So for example, let's just pick a number. So if your goal is, let's say, $1 million in a year, right? So we're talking right now, we're in March. So you're probably going to start April to next April, right? So I break that down. I think Jade Stone, our business manager, was discussing this, or it was you, Dave, also last Saturday. So $1 million, I divided into 4, right? Because there are 4 quarters in a year. And that would be $250,000 every 3 months. So now sometimes in our heads, we think, oh my God, $250,000, that's a lot of money, especially if we haven't experienced that. Now that's our own limitation. If we think it'll take us 10 years to make $1 million, the universe will just deliver that to you. You're going to encounter so many obstacles and so many things to prove you're right, because you'll always be right. Anyone out there listening, you're always going to prove yourself right, okay? So a year divided by 4 quarters, that would be your quarterly income, and then you divide that by months, right? And then, so now you go, okay, in your head, if there's a limitation that you cannot make that much money, like I said, you're going to find obstacles to put along the way. But if you have a target, right, that's an objective target, you divided it, you're more likely to reach up towards that because it's exhilarating. This feeling of, oh my God, I wonder. So now I'm going to write down, what am I going to do with this $1 million? Write it down. Because if you don't know your expenses, if you don't know what you're going to use it for, the universe might bring it to you. Unfortunately, it also doesn't know. It's almost like a big waterfall coming down. How are you going to deal with that, right? You don't have the structure yet. Are you going to just use buckets of water, so that you can like catch all the water coming down? Or do you actually have a structure? So that's where the structure comes in, right? And really building that. But it didn't take one day to build Rome. So especially if you have a big project, it's not going to take you one day or 1 month. So there would be pieces of it that you're going to be working on in order for you to get there. But the clearer you are as far as your vision and your mission, what are you going to do with this money? When those things are sorted out and on paper and you're clear about it, you'll notice that it just comes. Like suddenly, even the belief I remember of this, for example, if you can't believe that you can charge, let's say $10,000 for anything, right? For a client, for a program, then you can't charge $10,000 because that's your belief system. However, if you really, like, there's no limit. Okay, what is the job and what is this person going to get out of this? If you are clear about that, this person actually comes because they've been looking for you all your life. You just haven't offered anything. That's the reason why they haven't shown up. Does that make sense? And Vienna, would you like to share your take on this when you have a big goal, right? Like 1 year and then into quarters, and then you divide it into months, and then you divide it into weeks. And so now you know exactly what you're going to do every single week because you have a goal. It's kind of like a kid saying, I want some candy. But then if there's no reward, it's like, okay, why do I do those things again? I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying, right? So you have to have a goal. So then you have something to look towards rather than looking back and going, oh, these bad things happened to me, so I'm not going to do that. Well, that's just remorse and all these negative feelings that come with that. If you're always looking back, you can't really drive forward, can you? Can you guys drive while looking back? That's almost impossible, right? So
I was going to say I can barely drive while I'm looking forward, so that's probably bad.
All right. Oh, there, Vienna, would you like to? There's another follow-up question, but I think Vienna froze. So let me ask this question. Also from Monica. Will getting comfortable seeing the numbers daily help help evoke positive emotions for money and business owner success? That was the question.
So will doing that evoke positive emotion? That was a yes or no question. Gotcha. Yes. I think over time it will. It may not do that immediately, but I think that the practice of getting clear on the numbers and looking at the numbers, it'll probably stir up a mix of emotions. At least that was my experience earlier on. But I think what happens over time is you start to see the gaps. Like you talked about dividing income goals up into quarters, and kind of the way I think of it is, and the question that I've asked clients a number of times is, okay, if you want to make X number of dollars, regardless of what the amount is, how many sales do you have to make in order to, in terms of the income stream? Like if somebody says, okay, I want to make $1 million selling t-shirts, you better be selling a whole lot of t-shirts to make $1 million. And then, a lot of times, people have this thought process. They just pick an arbitrary amount of number, but they really don't work the math backwards at all. And that's where, and I think that was kind of to your point. So I think that to me is part of getting clear about the numbers, especially when you're thinking about it in relation to income goals. You've got to think about how many different income streams are there. Yeah. And you might get money from some other income stream that's not anything that you planned on. But if you just kind of have this vague notion of I'm going to go out and do some stuff and hopefully I'll make $500,000 in 6 months, if I were a betting man, I probably wouldn't bet much on that.
So just to be clear on the number, so let's say $250,000 was the goal, right? In 3 months. So I divided that on my calculator. That's 83,333.33 a month, right? So if you're charging a client $10,000, that might be, if that's the only service you provide, $10,000 for, I don't know how many months you're going to serve that client or how many weeks, depending on the specialization. That's about 8 clients a month. So instead of us chasing clients, I always teach this too. You don't want to be chasing people, because who wants to be chased? It's like, I don't want to be running after people, right? You want to be the magnet, especially if in human design you're a generator or manifesting generator. You can attract people into your tribe. And that's partly what we're sharing here, is you need to have clarity. You really need to know where you're at and how you can help these people. That's why we have a team of experts to help you get there. Because an employee mindset is different than an entrepreneur mindset, completely. And we also touched on up level that the 10,000, if you think of making $10,000 from a client, 50% of that goes to you and the 50% goes to your business, because your business has expenses. It doesn't come to all of you directly. Does that make sense? That's the reason why we do the math, right? That's why we get comfortable on the math. So I hope that answers your question. It seems like some other participants are having some Wi-Fi issues or connection issues. So if there are any more questions, so please post it on our Facebook page, Wealthy Money Mindset. And we also invite you to go to Uplevel 2021. That's our Facebook group. And you can review some of the videos that we put out there by our team, because that'll help you really be clear and get started on where you are, right? Because you don't want to wait like, oh, I'm gonna wait till a year until I'm ready, or 2 years. Everything is changing. Even last year's economy and last year's landscape is different than this year, right, Dave?
I mean, 2 years from now, it'll just be a different set of reasons not to move forward. I've learned that a long time ago. Delaying never improves anything.
Exactly. All right. So please make sure you go to our Uplevel 2021 and book a free clarity call with our Amy Lancy, right? She's there. And we are so glad that you joined us today. If you have any questions or any topics that you'd like to know a little bit about this money, maybe you have a money story that you want to overcome, or you want to be featured in this show, please make sure that you connect with us again through our Facebook group. And this is where you book the call. Let me just show that. All right. amylancy.as.me/clarity call. And we are taking applicants this week. And I want to invite you all on Wednesday at 9 a.m. You're going to see these experts again from 9 to 10 a.m. And we're going to be answering your questions. Perhaps you have your own nigglies about this. Okay, how do I start a business? I have a business, but it's not making money. So kindly go to that Uplevel 2021, 9 o'clock on Wednesday, and we have our Zoom call there, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Dave, for being part of this show. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Vivian, for having me.
Yes, and thank you, Lou, for looking at the questions and posting it here also. Thank you so much. Looking at the questions and posting it here also. Thank you so much. She's our virtual assistant. So as you can see, we have a team that actually helps support us in many ways. So thank you so much. And we will see you again next Wednesday at the same time, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Bye for now.